Hello everyone, this is Ash Jottings. In this video session, we'll talk about DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. Who discovered DNA? So let's get started. We know that nucleic acid are the biopolymers or large biomolecules essential to all known forms of life. The term nucleic acid is the overall name of DNA, that is deoxyribonucleic acid, and RNA. So we'll talk about DNA in more detail. Who discovered DNA? It was in the year 1866, Gregor Mendel first to suggest that the characteristics are passed down from generation to generation. I hope you remember this guy. Yes, Gregor Mendel, who is the father of genetics. So he's the one who said that the characteristics, like it is going to be passed on from one generation to another generation. And he actually coined the terms we all know today are recessive and dominant. Recessive and dominant. Then, later in the year 1869, Frederick Miescher, who identified nuclein by isolating the molecule from a cell nucleus. Later on, it became known as DNA. So he is the one who actually, take a different pen. He is the one who actually first laid the foundation, the study of DNA. So he actually gave it a name. Instead of DNA, he named it as nuclein. And later in the year 1881, Albrecht Kossel, he identified nuclein and he gave the name nucleic acid. So he is the one, Friedrich Miescher is the one who identified DNA, okay, but he gave the name nuclein, and later on the name was changed to nucleic acid by the scientist Albrecht Kossel. He is also a German, he's a German biochemist, and also Nobel Prize prize winner. He also identified 5 nitrogenous bases. So later in the year 1882, Walter Fleming, he discovered mitosis in the year 1882 when he was the first biologist to execute a wholly systematic study of division of mitosis. Okay, so he is the one who discovered mitosis. Then in the year 1900s, Theodore Boveri and Walter Sutton were independently working on what now known as the Boveri-Sutton chromosome theory, or the chromosomal theory of inheritance. So their findings are fundamental in our understanding of how chromosomes carry genetic material and pass it down from one generation to another. Later, okay, in the same year, I would like to mention Hammerstein, who actually showed DNA contains a pentose sugar. Okay, he is the one who actually proposed the DNA contains a pentose sugar. Later let's come back, in 1902, Sir Archibald Edward Garrod, he published the first finding from a study on recessive inheritance in human beings in the year 1902. So it was Garrod actually, he opened the door of our understanding of genetic disorder resulting from the error in the chemical paths in the body. Later, again, let me mention in the year 1910, Levin, he proposed the tetranucleotide theory. What is tetranucleotide theory? Where he proposed that the ratio of adenine, thymine, guanine, and cysteine in DNA are equal. So he is the one who actually proposed that tetranucleotide theory. And he, in the years, the same person in the year 1929, he demonstrated that the sugar is 2' deoxyribose. Okay. Now, in the year 1902, so we already spoke about it. And then in the year 1934, so let me write it here. Then 1934, a scientist called Casperson, he proved that DNA is a macromolecule and the tetranucleotide theory of DNA structure was overthrown. So he is the one who actually suggested that DNA is a macromolecule, macromolecule. But and also he disproved the theory, right? The tetranucleotide theory. Then in 1944, we all know Avery, Oswald Avery, with MacLeod and McCarthy. They first outlined the DNA as a transforming principle. Okay, so Avery, MacLeod, and McCarthy demonstrated that transforming principle is DNA, that is, the first indication that DNA is a genetic material, was done in the year 1944. In the year 1944 to 1950, Irving Chargaff discovered that DNA is responsible for the heredity and it varies among species or between species. So actually he published his works, his results demonstrating the consistency in the base ratios in DNA from different sources. Late in the year 1940, Barbara McClintock discovered of the jumping genes. So discovered jumping genes, or the idea that genes can move on a chromosome, earned her the Nobel Prize in Physiology. So it was her who actually discovered jumping genes. Later, in the year Let me just write it down here. Okay, now I mentioned in the next slide. Let's see. Okay, Morris, Wilkins, and Raymond Gosling. These both first prepared the first image of DNA using X-ray diffraction. So Morris Wilkins and Raymond Goslings were the one who actually first prepared the first image of DNA using the X-ray diffraction. And the same year, say 1952, again the Hershey and Chase, they both showed that hereditary material in phages is DNA. So remember them, they're connected with phages or phages. Okay, they actually determine the genetic material in phages is DNA. In the year 1951, again, Rosalind Franklin work in X-ray crystallography began when she started taking X-ray diffraction photographs of DNA. Her images showed that helical forms, which was confirmed by Watson and Crick nearly 2 years later. So it's Franklin who actually produced the X-ray diffraction picture indicating the DNA is a helix. Later on in the year 1953, it's Watson and Crick who deduced the double helix structure of DNA. They published they published on DNA's double helix structure that twists to form the ladder-like structure. And later on, let me just conclude this by saying in the year 1956, Frankel, Korat plus Senko both demonstrated that some viruses have RNA as genetic material. Okay, this is all about who discovered DNA. Thank you.